this is a very unique time in history, and we have just passed the 1 year anniversary of October 7th Al-Aqsa Flood, resistance operation by the Palestinian resistance. So it's a big one to start, but can you talk a little bit about the legacy of this operation and how it's changed the world in this last year?
Yeah, the images of October 7th will be etched in humanity's mind. Those images of the Palestinian resistance on top of Israeli tanks pulling out Israeli soldiers, and basically the biggest jailbreak in history, with the Palestinians being entrapped in that extermination camp called the Gaza Strip. It is definitely one of the most heroic actions of any colonized people on record. And no matter what the Zionists and the West tries to do to tarnish the memory and actions of October 7th, they're unable to do so. It was very, on the one hand, uh, infuriating, on the other, uh, kind of comical to see all the Western elite line up on the anniversary 2 days ago to condemn Palestinian resistance and speak of Jewish feelings and Jewish suffering and what have you. Because it was less, problematic, let's say, for them as elite to have made those statements a year ago. But today, there's been a year of genocide, the most widely documented genocide in the history of humanity, that's broadcasted to all the planet. And here you have the elite of the West prostrating at the altar of Zionism, and trying to, at this moment, disappear the genocide, and make the actions of resistance as if it is terrorism and or problematic. And so with that, statements like by, little bags of pieces like Trudeau, they have exposed themselves to be fully subordinate to some master outside their own even ability to make decisions as statesmen, quote unquote. So, you know, for Trudeau and Biden and all of those Western leaders to come out at this day making those statements is, actually a very big humiliation for themselves. And even if these leaders had an ounce of independence or self-respect, they would have refused to say anything in such language that they decided to. But again, they are all servants to Zionism. And that day, October 7th, 2023, will be remembered as the beginning of the end of 900 years, almost a millennia of Western domination, Western European domination of society, of human life, and of non-ending genocides that started with the Crusades, and now are ending with the Crusade. Mm. So this day will, as we now roll into a bigger regional war that's going to drag us into a world war, will be remembered as this moment that the millennia of Western European domination of humanity ended.
All right, Laith. So, thank you very much for that explanation. Now, I think this point of regional war that you mentioned that Israel and the US are driving, right? I think there's two important elements. There's the very blunt, very visible element right now, which is the continued attempts to invade Lebanon. I saw a clip on social media of some Israeli soldiers proudly putting the Israeli flag down in Lebanon, just openly showing, bragging about being colonists. Shameless, as per. You also though saw this escalating some attacks on Syria. And again, I've heard from people like Kivor Kamal Massian, great analyst online. He was talking about this reactivate activation of the Wahhabi elements in northwest Syria to kind of support Israel's efforts to spark this kind of regional war, this regional blowback across the entire region. So what do you think about this? I think Lebanon is where we start, but Syria is perhaps not the understood element by most people.
Yeah, let's look at Lebanon. It's now 11 days that the Israeli military is attempting to invade the south. There's only three axes that you can do a land invasion of Lebanon because of the geography. One of them is the Khiam axis, and the Khiam is the northernmost point of Palestine, and on looking and in Lebanon there. So that's at the top of the panhandle, and the second one is in around Marun al-Ras at the end, at the bottom of the panhandle, in midway through the border between Lebanon and Palestine. And the final axis is around Ras al Naqura, right on the coast. Okay, so they've been attempting for 11 days to enter, and they have been repelled every time. The resistance has control of the high points across the border that the Israelis are trying to reach, and they can't. And this is regular, basic military tactics and so on, force the Israelis into this position because of geography. And the resistance, just an hour ago, for instance, targeted a infantry unit that attempted to sneak in around Ras al Naqura and wipe them all out. This is important to say because the Israelis attempted in the beginning to come in with mechanized infantry units, with tanks and APCs. And we saw in the first 3 days the destruction of something around 15 to 20 Israeli tanks and APCs. And so they had no choice but to revert to special forces units because that can maybe sneak in without being noticed. And what we saw in the next 4 to 5 days of attempts by these special force units, like the Givati and the Golani and so on, that all of them got wiped out. The huge amount of officers of the main commando units, special forces units that the Israelis have, were obliterated. So now, day 11 of this attempt, we see them pushing regular infantry without even like the special forces units with them, without any armored units with them. And this is a point of desperation. Now they're trying to push like a wave, to open up basically the minefields. They're not even trying from the safer areas that have, let's say, less mines or whatever. They just push their disposable, probably, newly recruited soldiers, if not even mercenaries, into these minefields, and they got wiped out. So Hezbollah has full fire control over all of North Palestine. They have just an hour or two ago, sent over 100 missiles on the Haifa area. The Kiryat suburbs of Haifa are burning right now. Similarly, Kiryat Shmona in the north, in the Hula Valley, is burning completely. So Hezbollah has been, you know, hitting not only the invading forces, it's also hitting the zones where they are being gathered with nonstop artillery and missile fire. And at the same time, hitting the third line, which are the bases, the bigger bases. And if we put that in a whole context of Hezbollah has been doing this for a year, destroyed first all the surveillance equipment, then the first line bases, then the major bases in the Golan Heights and the north of Palestine. If we put that all in one picture, we can see that at any moment now, the ground is ready for invasion by Hezbollah and Syrian and other forces in the Golan Heights. And this is very, very significant because the inability of the Israelis to right now station themselves in safe places in the north of Palestine, and the fact that all the colonists who are armed militias have abandoned the north. This is the opposite of the situation in the south of Lebanon. The situation of the south of Lebanon is that for a year, all these Hezbollah fighters have been hiding under bombardment, something like 8,000 air raids on the Hezbollah positions, and these fighters have been just waiting for the right moment. And as we see right now, we don't even know how they're surviving. What kind of water are they drinking? What are they eating? These Hezbollah warriors. But they're able to take on the Israeli units because of their conviction. Their conviction and their knowing of the land geography, being indigenous to the land, being attached to it, is what is making them win. So I think in the next few days, as this war expands, let's say an attack on Iran happens, which everybody's expecting, then we should be all ready to be shocked as Hezbollah rolls over the north of Palestine and liberates it.
All right, Laith. So much else to get to, but I think the obvious point now is with Iran. There's an element of question right now. Did Iran conduct a nuclear weapon test? Because there's been a lot of discussions about an explosion that happened in the country, a controlled one. And what do you think there?
Well, look, we are living the fog of war right now, and there's going to be a lot of propaganda leaked and spread on both sides. Okay. But I think whether it happened or not is irrelevant. What we saw is a warning to the West being sent out that Iran may use a nuclear weapon. And let me be very, very honest with you here. Iran already has a nuclear weapon. And in fact, Syria already has a nuclear weapon. Both Iran and Syria received nuclear warheads at the collapse of the Soviet Union. Patriotic, anti-colonialist, anti-imperialist Soviet generals and scientists transported nuclear heads to both Iran and Syria at the collapse of the Soviet Union. And this is the only reason that Damascus is not occupied today. Beyond the fact that the Hezbollah and Iran and Russia came to save Damascus, Syria already threatened to use a nuclear warhead if the American and Western hordes got close to Damascus. This is the only reason it's not occupied. Similarly, right now, what we see is just a reminder and actually because the Americans know that both Syria and Iran have nuclear weapons. They're just lying to everybody. What What the Americans were worried about originally was not that Iran or Syria has nuclear weapons. What they were worried is that Iran or Syria builds their indigenous nuclear weapon manufacturing system. Okay. And Syria attempted to do that. And we remember the Zionist, meaning the American Air Force, claiming to be Israeli, hitting the nuclear reactor in Deir ez-Zor, my hometown, that North Korea was, the Democratic Republic of Korea was building for the Syrian government. And we know that Iran already succeeded in building its own indigenous nuclear power system and so forth. Now, why they're also worried now, the West, is because a nuclear warhead has a life of 25 years, maximum 30 years, maybe if you're lucky, 35 years, if it's just in the warehouse, basically. So when we calculate the collapse of the Soviet Union and the delivery of those weapons to Syria and Iran, that means the lifespan of those warheads is coming to an end now. So there is an urgency, for instance, there was an urgency in Syria, for instance, to acquire another nuclear warhead to protect itself. But that urgency is not anymore in Iran. So if the Americans actually allow, number one, Israel to attack Iran's nuclear reactors, this will be a nuclear war. The nuclear reactors of Israel will be hit. And if anyone actually uses a mini nuke, strategic nuke, what have you, we'll be seeing nuclear warheads flying all over.
Well, that's a lot. Certainly even I wasn't aware of. So, as much as I would love to discuss that more, I don't know if there is much more to discuss on that front because you just went through everything. So let's talk quickly about some of the other axis of resistance operations. Specifically, I'm looking at the Yemeni, Iraqis, and Hezbollah. So Electronic Intifada, obviously a great resource for people. They talked about these drone and missile operations striking bases in Israel. And then we obviously know Hezbollah is still striking in Israel despite all this rhetoric that Hezbollah is finished. The second Nasrallah was assassinated by the barbaric Israelis.
It is important to notice a few things there. One is that yesterday the Israeli media, specifically one of the major TV stations that is 100% fascist, 100% Netanyahu, aired a program with a list of resistance leaders, personalities in the Arabic and Muslim world that Israel wants to assassinate. They put the picture with X's on their heads and targets and so on. And that included, of course, Sayyid Abdul Malik al-Houthi, leader of the Ansarullah in Yemen, and the leadership in Iran, president, head of the military, and the Ayatollah. And I think the one that freaked out everybody the most here in reaction, and I think it's very stupid of the Israelis, was that they put the head of, the major Shia cleric in Iraq, al-Sistani, on this list. This is a very gentle man, quiet, never carried arms, and is beloved within the Shia community across the world. And if he is assassinated, I'll tell you, there will be hordes of Iraqis eating everybody on their way alive, on their way to Palestine. So it'll be one of those, suicidal moments that Israel can do is to assassinate Sistani. But I think all the leadership of the axis of resistance and or public and religious individuals here and personalities in the region that are with the resistance, they all know now that they are targets. And this is the only thing that the Israelis are good with, assassinating people that are public figures that are easy to know where they are, and to kill civilians. Okay, so the Iraqi resistance has already increased their attacks. We're upwards of 6 different attacks that they are coming from Iraq on specifically the Israeli positions in the south of occupied Palestine around the major air bases, and the Israeli positions in the Golan Heights. And that shows you, again, that these are all coordinated attacks. Similarly, Ansarullah, by the way, in retaliation to that list of individuals to assassinate the Israelis announced, Ansarullah in Yemen and the Yemeni armed forces just announced that Netanyahu is a legitimate target. And we may hear very soon an award being offered for bringing him to justice, dead or alive. Okay, so I think we're going to move right now to a stage where Israeli officials and Western officials that participated in this genocide will become not only targets of assassinations, but also will have awards on their heads published globally. And that will be a very significant thing to do, because if there's a few $1,000,000 offered for the head of some British or American or a Canadian ambassador or official ambassador in those countries from Israel and or officials of those countries that are participating in the genocide. Yeah, so you could imagine, how much of a security headache this is going to become. Even if, let's say, some people think that, oh wow, if we have an award for the head of Netanyahu and he's traveling, who's gonna try to take him out? Well, just the thought of it is going to cause the security to be extreme and to limit their movement and to cost so much. Now, also remember, there's a lot of hungry people in the streets of the United States and Canada and others. If you're offering $2 million for the head of an Israeli ambassador, some homeless person may take it on, right? So everything and every space will be, by that point, a threat, and we will see. I think this is a move in the right direction. We will see its effects very fast.
All right, Laith. So I think it's certainly time we shift into the Canada element of our show. And a quick aside I wasn't expecting to make. It turns out Mayor Weinstein, the JDL thug, has caught wind of our show. And he claims there's a clip, right? I think I was talking to you about it, about how much of a colonist pig Mayor Weinstein is and how much he understands Canada better than the average Palestine protester. I believe that is that clip. Either way, it's one of these clips.
Yeah.
And he claims that it contains a death threat against him, against Mayor Weinstein. Like, these Zionists are ridiculous, right? I saw some clip recently where what Zionist was like lying on the ground. It was like, oh, you're attacking me, right? It's this trend always at the protests, at these things.
Yeah.
You go to the encampments. I'm in danger. I'm in danger. Nobody's touching you. Nobody's touching you. Shut your trap. Shut your trap. Nobody's touching you. This guy's insane. You think I have enough? You think I actually am going to waste my time making a death threat against Mayor Weinstein? I don't need to make death threats. I wouldn't make death threats. What's the point of that? It's pointless little thing. It's just this. It's like you said, right, with Weinstein, right? That story about how the second this guy, his JDL thugs get physical, they come on in, and then one guy socks Weinstein because it's getting up all in his face, right? It's becoming dangerous, and the guy collapses to the ground, right?
Yeah, I know. All his guys with him, they ran away. They ran away. They left him, on the side of the street, blacked out, knocked out from one punch. Look, in Arabic, there's a proverb, but it's in the Syrian, accent. It says, "ضربني وبكى وسبقني واشتكى," which means he hit me and then he cried and he ran before me and complained. Okay, so this is the embodiment of Zionists. Okay, it's the embodiment of Zionists. They colonize your land, they beat you, they kill your family, they steal your land, and then when you want to complain, they're already crying and telling the people you're an anti-Semite that wants to kill them. Okay,
Well,
so
yeah, late. I've now successfully pissed off the JDL once. Still got a long way to go to catch up with you and Eves.
yeah, yes, and it's hilarious to see how much we occupy in their head. Uh, the space we occupy. I mean, I'm here all the way in Beirut, and I every day I open, on Twitter, and I'll see, 5 to 10 tweets of Zionists still complaining that the little puppet Trudeau hasn't been able to get back any money from me. Like they're like still butthurt about it, honestly. And they to see them like fight each other, the liberal Zionists and the conservative Zionists, and use my name as an indicator of, my name has become an action. It's not anymore a noun, it's a verb.
It's the
It's
Laith Marouf test.
yes, it's hilarious. And all of these will, honestly be wishing that they're living these days very soon. These days will become heaven to them, because very soon, as Palestine will be liberated, and I think I can, at this moment, looking at the path of this war, I can say that within a year, we will be burying Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah in Jerusalem. Within a year, we'll be burying all our martyrs here in Jerusalem. Within a year, we will be praying in Jerusalem together, and there will be no more Zionism. There will be no more American presence in the area. That's a guarantee within this year. And once that is done, I will make it my personal duty to actually hunt the Meir Weinsteins of the world, hunt them, to bring them to stand trial in a liberated Jerusalem. Him, the leaders of the liberal and conservative party, the CEO of the CBC and CTV, and the editor-in-chief of the Globe and Mail, all of them will stand trial. And those trials will find them guilty of aiding, abetting, and commissioning war crimes. And we know what is the punishment for such a crime. This is a promise to all of them.
Well, if we do see liberated Palestine, as I think we all hope to see in a year, would be a miracle. It would truly be fantastic. Where you look at the defeat of the fascist Axis after World War II, well, what did you have? You had the Nuremberg prosecutions, which would have been way harsher actually if the West didn't interfere massively to get as many Nazis and fascists out as they could have. However, despite all the mutual enjoyment we had in that discussion, we must carry on because the Defense Minister of Canada, Bill Blair, is saying it's okay for Israel to attack Iran's oil fields. Now, Bill Blair might be known to Torontonians for, I believe, the handling of G20 protests in, I think it was 2010 or 2011. I was pretty young then, but even I remember hearing about that. And isn't it crazy well, not crazy, isn't it perfectly rational that that guy is now the Canadian Defense Minister saying, "Oh, hey, yeah, go bomb Iranian oil fields, Israel." What do you think, Leif?
So first off, obviously, this shows you how irrelevant the Canadian military is, and or its inability to produce actual strategists and military tacticians. This is a policeman, basically, being put into a position of a military control, and that doesn't work. He's not doing he's fighting a full-on war. He's not fighting demonstrators in the streets of Toronto. But I would like everybody to understand this here, because it is guaranteed that Israel will not exist anymore within the next year. is guaranteed. The United States and the Western Empire are now choosing to use this colony to the maximum before it collapses. And if we look on an international scale, the new world that is emerging, there's three pillars to it. There's the industrial base of China, and there's the oil and military technology bases of the Gulf and Russia. Okay, these are the three pillars. And the United States economy is collapsing, but it's still a oil giant. It's one of the three oil giants with Russia and the Gulf. And therefore, the path forward for the United States is to take out one of the other two competitors on the oil market. And they've attempted to do that with Russia. And that plan failed. If they would have been able to actually cut Russia's flow of oil and gas, the prices of oil and gas would have skyrocketed. The Americans would have become billionaires again as a whole society, not only the few billionaires that they have. And the Chinese economy would have collapsed because there will be no more cheap oil and gas to feed the industrial zones of China. And then, you know, there will be a return to manufacturing in the US and other places. That was the original plan. But Russia and OPEC Plus, which is supposed to be under, OPEC is supposed to be under American hegemony, but OPEC Plus refused to raise the prices in collaboration with Russia after the attack on its oil infrastructures and the pipelines. And India decided with BRICS to flood the market with Russian oil and gas that is smuggled into India to keep the prices down. And here we go, that plan failed. So now what is the US has a choice now. It may want to, and this is a very, very probable, actually this is the number one probability of tactical strategic movements that the US could do right now, given that Israel is collapsing, is to use it on purpose to attack Iran's oil and gas fields and to be involved in this attack purposefully, openly, as we see right now, the buildup of American presence in the region, which will lead to Iran and the axis of resistance destroying Israel, which is already foretold, but more importantly, destroying the oil and gas fields of the vessels that the US is controlling in the Gulf, which will lead to two things. Number one, collapse of the oil flow in the world, and then Russia will have a choice to stop sending anything to anybody in the world, oil and gas, and direct it all to China in order to maintain its economic advancement, or the Chinese economy would collapse, right? In any case, even if Russia diverts all its oil and gas towards China, the rest of the world will be left with no oil and gas. And that means the United States will dominate that rest of that market, okay? And so we see how the United States actually will right now throw Israel into its final battle on purpose. So nobody should be crying now. The dead Jews that are going to come back in coffins from Palestine are all going to be because the US chose for them to be sacrificed on the imperial altar. And the Zionist elite, like Netanyahu and others, and the Zionist elite in Canada are choosing, by pushing Israel to attack Iran, they're choosing to sacrifice Jews on the altar of imperialism.
And I actually want to talk about that point a little bit because it really reminds me of the Ukrainian Banderite diaspora that, as I discussed in the House of Anti-Communists article I did in September of 2023. You know, the Ukrainian Banderites were very consciously imported, right, over this 70-plus year process up to the modern day. And when you have this proxy war, NATO proxy war in Russia, Russia launched this special military operation. What do you see except for the Banderites in Canada, Ukrainian Banderites in Canada? They end up vocally advocating for and successfully getting Ukrainians in Ukraine to be sent to the altar, sent to their death for the altar of imperialism, right? And we're seeing this pattern come up again, right? And if you look at this pattern, I think it's important to emphasize because you have the situation too, like with the Philippines, right? The U.S. is trying to use them as a suicidal force against China as well, right? You're seeing this period of time where some populations are just being like thrown completely onto this altar, and if it doesn't stop, they're gonna get wiped, right? We're in a time where some nations will die, some for good and perhaps some for worst.
Yes, yes. I mean, the all of these borders that were drawn at the end of World War One by the West are collapsing. See, like this is what is at stake right now, and this is why the West, the empire is trying to at least gain something from the collapse of Israel right now. And because they know the minute that Israel collapses, the Arabic world will be unified. There's nothing to stop it. Those borders that existed for 100 years are gone. And we can look at it in a bigger picture. If there is a rearrangement of colonial borders in the Arabic region, what is that? What is there to stop that from happening also in the sub-Saharan region? We're already seeing it with the confederation of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. Truth of the matter, the sub-Saharan cultures, civilization, they're one civilization, the Bantu Zulu nations should be in one country. Similarly, Latin America should be one country. Similarly, Turkic nations in Central Asia should be all one country, and so forth. And that was the natural progression of time that was coming prior to these colonial borders coming in and being enforced by the West. And that's going to be all erased with the liberation of Palestine.
I think that's in terms of this question of the nations and the fictional borders, I think it's something that I want to talk about a little bit too, because I don't think people in the West, and I think especially Canada, I don't think they grasp how much of our existence is based on fiction, right? The nation states are based on fictions, but remember, these are fictions perpetrated into existence by genocide, by mass murder, by continuous repression, right? That must be emphasized. The fiction is being enabled by this murder, by this genocide, but it is fiction. So much of even I think the lack of generating human connection, this pretension of community in the Western countries, right? Again, it's artificial. It's fictional, right? Because you're building this community, you're building these nations on top of another nation, and that's never going to work long term. And I don't think people have mentally clocked that in their heads. I genuinely think there's a lot of people in Canada that see it as Palestine will be liberated and okay. I mean, that's that. That's basically what I think what their thinking is. I don't think they understand the scale of human change we're going to see, the death of nations, the birth of nations. I think people need to try to face up to the extent of the opportunity that's there, but also to the fact that, the extent of the risk that, when we criticize people for not following the action of Palestine action and these things, we're not we're not even calling for you to take exceptional risk in the circumstance. Exceptional risk is doing nothing. Because do you want the world to change when you do nothing and you have no hand in it? Or do you want to have a hand in it because you took the bold action? You took the anti-colonial action. You actually prepared yourself for the future that you say is going to come. You need to do that. To the audience, you need to do that. And to the audience, get your friends and your activist friends to think that way. Because the future's coming whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this video yesterday. Somebody produced, I don't know who, of imagining 2040 or something, and there's a commemorations of the Gaza genocide, and then kids
Wasn't it
around the
Erdogan? It
world.
wasn't it Erdogan? I thought it was like a Turkish government video or something.
I think so. I think so. Probably, right? So, but it was powerful in that sense. I mean, it was very cliche, but the idea that your grandchildren asking you where and what did you do during the genocide in Gaza? Um, this is the truth is anybody who's not taking action, and I don't mean demonstrating or writing something, taking actual action in Canada or the US to stop the harm being conducted on their behalf by their governments is complicit. And so Palestine action are, in my mind at this moment, the only people in the West that are not complicit, okay, in the crimes of genocide. And, one Palestine actionist is worth all the anti-Zionist Jews combined on this planet. Because not only we haven't seen any, it's been 130 somewhat years since 1880 something when the first Zionists landed in Palestine. It's been 130 years that we didn't see one Jew on this planet carry arms against Zionism or die for the liberation of Palestine. In fact, every Westerner that died or was killed by the Zionists was non-Jewish. When we talk about Rachel Corrie, even to the point of Aaron Bushnell. If you don't want to carry arms against the United States of America or Canada and destroy their military factories or military bases or stop their shipments, if you don't want to take arms as a Jewish Canadian against the CIGA or the fascists that are representing you in the synagogues, those rabbis and or those parliamentarians, well, at least emulate yourself like Aaron Bushnell. But they don't even want to light themselves on fire to light the path for their own comrades or to announce that they are innocent of Zionism. Aaron Bushnell is the most honorable person in North America because of his self-immolation. So this is a damning statistic to say not one Jew on this planet died for Palestine or carried arms against the Zionists.
Yeah, it certainly is. Certainly is, Laith. Speaking of an organization that is fighting a good fight, that is, of course, Samun. You would know Charlotte Cates and such that are organizing in Canada and other parts around the world. Now, there's an escalating push for them to be listed as a terrorist organization. Bring it up now because the public safety minister, Dominic LeBlanc, has said the government is considering adding Samun to the terrorist list. You also have Pierre Poilievre demanding it, saying that if he forms government, Samun will be listed. And at this current point, if the world situation doesn't collapse so far that Canada just doesn't have an election, Poilievre is going to come into power. There's no way the Liberals win this. They are going to get trounced at a Kim Campbell level, the way things are going. And I mean, they're deserved totally for the joke of a governance they provided. But that's the reality. That's the reality. But I don't think we can discuss that too much because there is another longer story, and this is just an update. Have you seen the case, Laith, of lawyer Joanna Berry? There's this intimidation attempt that was done by Niagara Police, but apparently it was on behalf of Ottawa Police for her pro-Palestine posts. Now, from what I saw, there was a controversy around whether people from the Law Society of Ontario had reached to her. Joanna Berry said in a later post that apparently it was a group of 10 lawyers. They were trying to pass themselves off as association. She said seems though. This is still a story in flux right now, but I think it's pretty alarming what's been said, right? And it's really echoes of what you've seen very openly in the United Kingdom, right? Talking about how she's you're walking a line is the quote, I want to paraphrase it properly, about her social media posts. She's not really exceptional in terms of what she posts about Palestine, right? Obviously anti-imperialist, obviously wants to see liberation of Palestine. Good, but it's not exceptional. I mean, it's not exceptional, right? There's a lot of people that post for the liberation of Palestine. There's people in professional positions that post about the liberation of Palestine. But it's eye-catching because they actually went in there, pretended to be friendly. It's this, bland Canadianness that I've hated, this polite society that I've grown to despise. There's a big part of the reason why I left that forsaken country, um, is because I couldn't stand this plate society. And it is this plate society. Like you've seen it by getting run around by the CRTC, when you folks were trying to get a proper community media station with national funds that should have been there. Um, and it's just in general, even when the police come to intimidate, it's, oh, a polite Canadianness. Your posts are walking a line, you know? Hey, you should just go ahead and, tone the post down. People on LinkedIn can't block you. You should just tone your post down, eh? Hey, come on, guys. Hey. It's crap. It's total crap. All this politeness, all this polite society, this crap I was raised this. This crap you've seen for so many years when you're in Canada, Laith. It's crap. It's total crap. It's just over.
Yeah, yeah. There's a difference between Anglo colonialism and American colonialism, or French colonial attitudes. The Americans tell you F off, N word, okay, or sand N word openly in your face, right? You come into their business. Similarly, Quebecois, they're very blunt in their racism. But Anglo Canadians and British, they are very, I call it tea time colonialism. You walk into a business and he's racist and he doesn't want to serve you, let's say in Canada, Anglo-Canadian. They'll be like, sir, excuse me, sir, we're just closed right now. Okay, that's it. Okay. And so that's the attitude in general in English Canada. It's becoming different with the Trump era is changing, and we have these like the midget Poliver, for instance, acting very much like Trump. I mean, at least Trump is a big guy, so he's from New York, so he fits the bill. But this guy is a little midget from I don't know even which part of Canada, which backwater he's from, like which lake was he born in? Like what swamp did he come out of? Those are big questions. I have no idea what the answer is. But yeah, look, I watched that video. It really, like, I was cracked up, number one, because here is a lawyer. I mean, I feel for her. I really feel for her. But she was like shocked that somebody comes to her door, number one, and she's like, but I'm married to, or I'm dating a Jew, like it's
Anti-Zionist Jew.
anti-Zionist Jew. But here's what I'm trying to say is that people are still think that their whiteness and or their proximity to Jewishness somehow is supposed to give them protection. And they're in shock when that doesn't give them the protection when they're dealing with Jewish supremacists like Zionists, okay? So that's my first note from that video. My second note from that video was like, why did you open the door for them? If I was them, if I was her, I would be like, get the hell out of my face, get off my property, or I'm gonna shoot you. Come back with a warrant if you have something. Okay. Number three, the thing that I got from that video was it's clear that all laws in Canada are going to be suspended very soon. When you have the Law Society or the Bar Association being strong-armed by 10 Zionist lawyers to try to threaten a bar member lawyer, that is a threat to the basics of the so-called common law system in Canada. And therefore, we should be Now, these are all kind of signals, smoke signals for what's coming. There will be a suspension of all rights. There will be martial law implemented. Is in the next few weeks before the American election happens, before November 6th. Basically, we have less than 4 weeks. We will be in a full-out regional war with thousands of American soldiers dead. In the next 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, this is the reality. And this, in my
Wait,
opinion,
I want to just jump in to say something quickly here. You've said that Canadian forces are in there, right? So maybe you should incorporate that for Canadians, right?
oh yes, oh yes, the Canadian forces are in on the ground. There's the what is it called, the Canadian Special Force 2 or whatever.
JTF too?
Yes. JTF2 is already on the ground inside Palestine. I want to also say that so this is going to happen. There will be no American elections, and there will be no Canadian elections. There will be martial law in the streets as things get out of hand in the streets. We're already seeing them get out of hand in Germany. Riots are building up. And look, the involvement of Western troops, by the way, I don't think anybody. I know I'm coming off topic right now completely.
Go ahead.
Uh, uh, the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, to throw 85 bunker buster bombs all at once over one location, meant that there's more F-35s in the air than there is Israeli pilots. The US delivered over the last 2 months multiple waves of F-35s in new jets to Israel, but Israel doesn't have pilots trained to do this. Just like how Ukraine doesn't have the F-35, F-15, F-16 pilots there. They need a year to be trained at least. These are very advanced electronic, heavy, equipment that requires a lot of training. And so in reality, Canadian, American, and British pilots are the ones that are flying the newly delivered F-35s. And they were and are currently directly involved in the bombardment of Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, Iraq, and Yemen. They are directly involved.
All right, Laith. Well, I think there is not a more powerful place and a more important place to end off this episode. So I'll invert a little bit. Laith, first of all, thank you for the analysis. It's been great to host this episode with you, alongside you.
Good to be with
And
you, Aidan.
yes. And I think to the Canvas audience, obviously, thank you for making it all the way to the end of this episode. We're walking into a very serious time in history. And I think the Canada Files and myself, I hope we are able to walk in with a good consciousness into what comes, and perhaps that's world war, perhaps at least it's going to be a horrific regional war that we watch in the Middle East. That's at least, but we could very easily see world war. And Laith, I know for sure you and Free Palestine TV will walk into this new era with dignity, having done everything we can to inform people. But I think people have to do everything they can to get informed, and activists have to escalate with the greatest of urgency. It's almost a plea at this point. Just can have some conception of your own interests. I don't like to see people of my own country suffer, regardless of my issues I have them politically. And I think you and I both understand that that's going to come if there isn't escalation. So I'm going to leave it there. But if you folks appreciate the analysis of the Canada Files and Free Palestine TV for this show, please donate to both outlets on a monthly, annual, or one-time basis. It's very much appreciated. And Leith, again, thank you. And to the audience, thank you for making it all the way to the end. Goodbye, folks.